Or they may choose to do traditional and Chicago on every single patient side by side, and so that they have a wealth of information to make their decisions on care.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions that I can answer for you?
Wendy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How may I help you?
Hi, this is Sheila.
Hi, Sheila.
Is there software that's going to be coming out that will measure this so that it can just be a quick edit versus doing all calculations?
Absolutely. Yes, that's in the works.
Okay. Thank you.
So you'll definitely be ahead of the game if you get started on it now. You'll really have an understanding of what those marks are measuring. And I personally think that this is the way that the literature and that the field is going.
Okay, so, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wendy?
Yes.
Andre, Marshall Clinic.
Andre, how are you?
How are you? The IRP boxes, I always tend to draw it a little bit longer. There's no downfall for that, right? We can...
Yes and no. In a normal intact contraction where there's a good strong resting pressure, it wouldn't do you any harm to make your box longer. For example, if I drew it on this particular swallow right here, whether I draw it like this, okay, I get a 5.4, or whether I draw it a little longer, doesn't change it much. But the risk would be in a patient like this where they have pretty weak LES pressure over here, that if you make it too long, the computer is going to calculate that low pressure over there. It's going to include that in its calculation. See if I can get a gastric baseline under there. And it could change it. So it could be significant if there's weaker pressure over here than there was underneath the swallow itself.
Okay. Well, I never make it that long, but okay, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Andre. All right. Good questions. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to ask?
Well, Wendy?
Hello.
Hi, this is Tom from Portland.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Good. There seem to be times when you, with people that actually have a disordered relaxation, where you end up with quite a bit of intrabolus pressure in the midst of where you're trying to do the IRP.
Okay.
Is there any way to, you just include that and just accept it, or is there anything to be done about that?
If I understand you correctly, you're talking about, you know, I think of intrabolus pressure as being up here. You're talking about pressure across here?
Well, in the lower area below the deceleration point, you know, you often see esophageal outflow resistance there.
Oh, yes.
And that can get mixed in with the IRP. Is that a false reading then, or?
Well, as long as you stay and start your box at the proximal edge of the LES and run it down from there, you should not be including any pressurization that's up here. Tom's talking about pressurization here in the distal segment of the esophagus when you've got pressurization in this area.
Well, even farther to the right of that sometimes, you know, closer to where you talked about the hypercontraction, you know, right
over this area.
Right here. Down in the very, very end of the contraction.
Yeah. But I think as long as you're starting at the proximal edge of the LES, then you're only catching LES area and not distal esophageal area. And that's why I wouldn't start this box up here, for example. That would be too high, because then I think you would be picking up on some of that interbolus pressure. But I'll tell you what, the IRP is not looking for high pressure rate areas. It's looking for the lowest pressure areas in 4 contiguous or non-contiguous areas, at least a second apart. So even if there was pressure up in this area up here, if there was a relaxation at all down here, it would be looking for those relaxation areas. It would not be trying to calculate this big pressure up here. It's looking for the relaxation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Wendy. It's Leanne.
Hi, Leanne. How are you?
Good, thank you. Can you show us some abnormal studies? Because, sometimes it's not not that definitive. Like the achalasia.
Okay. And I think I've got one pulled up for you that I can take a look at. Here's one I pulled up. This is vigorous achalasia. This is your sample study if you want to look at that. And if I were going to measure this with the Chicago values, I would jump right in here. I've already done my temperature compensation. I've turned on my isobaric contour lines. I already have my measurement box turned on. And if I want to, I can pull over the LS line here to the initiation of the swallow as a guide for me. Then I go to my ruler. I'm in my Chicago calculation ruler, starting with CFE. We might argue that it's difficult to find a contractile deceleration point here, but when I'm doing a CFE on something like this, I'm starting on the 30 millimeter isobaric contour line. It doesn't really matter whether I stop here or here or here or down here. The slope will stay the same. So I'm just measuring the tangent or the slope. Keep that in mind on the CFE, that you're measuring a slope. And the slope along the 30 millimeter isobaric contour line runs like so. I let go, and remember, under 9 is normal. Pretty clearly not normal. I'll log it, and I'll move on to the DCI. Distal contractile integral, I would start under the striated muscle section at the opening of the UES. I would scroll across and down, including everything that's inside the 20 millimeter isobaric contour, that blue contour line. I wouldn't want to cut it too short like that. I'm going to want to include everything inside the 20 millimeter isobaric contour line. And I'll run, in this case, all the way down to the proximal edge of the LES and let go. There's your distal contractile integral, and I'll log it. Then I would go down to distal. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick question. So the 30 millimeter is the black line. So the 20
is the black line, correct? Blue. And the 20 is the blue line, correct?
How do you know where to start that box from the top?
Up here, I'm going to start at the opening of the UES.
Okay.
And I'm going to be under the striated muscle segment. And you can only estimate it. It's kind of this little. It's about 1 to 2 centimeters in length. And so I'm estimating approximately in the middle of my X right there is about where that ends. And I'm going to run underneath that striated muscle section and down across. Whoops, I went to latency.
But you mentioned